There we go. So just a little background on the Rural Zone program. It was signed into law in May of 2017. Rural stands for Revitalizing Underdeveloped Rural Areas Legislation. And the purpose of the program was to try to stimulate investment and job creation and economic development and business creation in rural downtowns to lead to their revitalization. Each year, the commissioners of the Georgia Department of Economic Development and the Georgia Department of Community Affairs can designate up to 10 of these rural zones. The first set of communities was announced in December of 2017, and their zone began January 1st of 2018. It is a 5-year designation, so if you're designated, you submit your application this year, the life of your zone will begin January 1st of 2023 and will last until December 31st, 2027. Here are all the rural zones that we have designated over the past 5 years. We have about 45 around the state now. And to be eligible to apply, cities and counties with a population under 15,000 people are eligible to apply. The zone must have a concentration of historic commercial structures that are at least 50 years old. So by historic, we mean at least 50 years old, and that they are concentrated within a historic area. So typically that's going to be your historic downtown area. Within the application, you do need to prove economic distress and blight. You can do that by showing us that your poverty rate is quite high, that you have a very high vacancy rate in your downtown area, or you can show us photographs of the blighted buildings in your downtown. In order to be able to be designated, you must be in compliance with all state requirements regarding comprehensive planning and reporting. Your service delivery strategy must be up to date. You must have submitted your most recent government management indicators report, and the report of local government finances must also be all up to date by October 1st of 2022. So you can go ahead and submit if you are out of compliance, but you will not be designated if you don't get up to date and get out of that delinquency by October 1st of 2022. If you are wondering if your city or county is in compliance, you can always go to our website. If you go to our website and you click on one of the 3 boxes that says local government assistance, it will take you to this page. If you scroll down on the local government assistance page, you'll see here under local planning, you can check your comprehensive planning status and your service delivery strategy status. Down here you can check your whether or not you're delinquent on your GOMI survey. And then over here is where you can check whether or not you're up to date on your report of local government finances. So like I said, all of that is on the local government assistance tab on DCA's website. Questions, or if you do see that you are out of compliance and need to talk with somebody for GOMI and report of local government finances, you can send all your questions to Norma Allen at this email address. If you see that your community is delinquent on their community, the comp plan or service delivery status, you can talk to Kareth Lee and contact her at this address. And these prompts just show you how to get to the different areas on our website that I just went through. Also, to be eligible and apply for rural zone designation, you need to have a feasibility study or a market analysis. Most everybody submits leakage reports as these, identifying any business activities that could be supported by your community that are in your proposed zone. And then we also require a master plan or strategic plan for your downtown area that clearly outlines your goals for revitalization and the action steps for fulfilling those goals. So that's just the basic eligibility for putting together an application. And now I'm just going to briefly go over the 3 tax credits. What is a tax credit? It's a dollar for dollar reduction of the amount of income tax that's going to be owed by a business. And tax credits are generally going to save you more money in taxes than deductions, because deductions only reduce the amount of your income tax that's going to be subject, or I'm sorry, your income that's subject to tax, whereas a credit is going to directly reduce your tax bill. So a dollar for dollar reduction of the income tax that you owe. And that's what these are. These are rural zone tax credits. They are state of Georgia income tax credits. They cannot be sold, and the credits are non-refundable, which means that if the amount of your credits is more than the amount of your income tax liability, rather than getting a check back for that difference, you'll actually be able to carry forward that credit to be used against future years' income tax liability. So you won't get a check back, but you can carry that credit forward for up to 10 years. This tax credit is not just for new businesses that come into your zone, but also the expansion of existing businesses as well, as long as jobs are created. The Rural Zone program goals are to assist in revitalizing rural downtowns by offering these tax credits to businesses and developers who create jobs, invest in commercial activities, and create new businesses. The three Georgia income tax credits are the job tax credit for job creation, the investment tax credit for the purchase of buildings in the downtown, and then the rehab tax credit. That's when someone spends money on the rehabilitation of a building in the downtown. One thing I want you to remember about the rural zone tax credits is the key to accessing any of the three tax credits, whether it be the job tax credit, the rehab tax credit, or the investment tax credit. The key is always going to be job creation. The jobs have to be created in order to unlock even the rehab and the investment tax credit. So the jobs are key. The threshold is you have to create at least two new jobs. So whether that be if a new business comes in, they've got to create two new jobs. If it's an existing business that decides that it wants to expand, maybe there's an existing restaurant that wants to expand into the next door building. So they purchase that building and they'd like to take the investment tax credit. They would only be able to take the investment tax credit is if in that expansion into that other building, they're able to hire two additional new jobs. The job tax credit is a $2,000 credit per new full-time equivalent job. So full-time equivalent job, FTE, basically just means that you can add together employees' hours that aren't working full-time to equal one full-time equivalent job. Meaning, let's say you got 4 part-time workers, each working 10 hours a piece. So 4 times 10, that's 40 hours. That would equal one full-time equivalent, one FTE, even though it's 4 separate workers. So remember that you have to create at least 2 new jobs. The eligible business that create these jobs that would be eligible for the tax credit include these types of business with these NAICS codes. And basically, these are the kinds of businesses that you would want to see open in your downtown and create jobs. And those would be a law office, a cupcake shop, a brewery, restaurant, gift shops, doctor's office, bed and breakfast, those kind of things that you would like to see in downtown, revitalizing blighted buildings in your downtown. The job tax credit cannot exceed a $40,000 credit per year per business, and the credit can be taken for 5 years as long as the jobs are maintained. So if a business comes in and creates the 2 jobs, they not only get 2 times $2,000, which is $4,000 for the first year, but if those jobs are maintained for all 5 years, that would be 5 years times $4,000. So $20,000 credit over the 5 years. The investment tax credit is going to be if someone comes in, a developer comes in and purchases a building. and he would be able to get, or she would be able to get 25% of the purchase price of that building as a Georgia state tax credit. This tax credit cannot exceed $125,000. Since you as new rural zones, the life of your rural zone will not start until January 1 of 2023, then the building would have to be purchased after January 1 of 2023 in order to be eligible for the tax credit. Um, and as I said before, jobs are key. So if a developer comes in and purchases the building and then just sits on the building, he will not be able to take a tax credit. An eligible business would have to be located within that property and create at least 2 full-time equivalent jobs in order for the developer to get the tax credit. Sometimes the developer comes in, purchases the building, rehabs the building, and then leases it out to another business, and that business then creates the 2 jobs. So the business would be the person or the group that would get the job tax credit, whereas the developer would be able to get the investment tax credit and the rehab tax credit. Sometimes the business owner is the same person that purchases and rehabs and creates the job. So it just depends. The rehab tax credit is going to be equal to 30% of qualified rehab costs. That tax credit can't exceed $150,000. And qualified rehab costs are defined for the rural zone program as labor and material costs. The taxpayer in this instance cannot use the same costs to generate any additional state income tax credit. So for instance, in this case, the developer wouldn't also be able to, in a sense, double dip and get the rural zone rehab tax credit and HPD's state income tax credit for rehab properties. Are there any questions before I go on about either the job tax credit, the rehab tax credit, or the investment tax credit? Anyone? Anyone? No? All right, well, I'll continue on then. Um, a question we often get is, can a business combine all 3 rural zone tax credits in a project? And the answer is yes. Here's an example of it. The Southern Philosophy Brewing Company down in Bainbridge, Georgia. They purchased this historic building on the downtown square that was constructed in 1880. It had a good bit of damage to it. This is the interior before rehab began and during rehab. This is what it looked like nearing completion. This is what it looks like after rehab. And it's a very successful rehab and has done really well for downtown Bainbridge. As I said, they took advantage of all 3 tax credits. They created 3 jobs. So we're able to get the job tax credit. They paid $41,000 for the building. So 25% of that is a $10,000 tax credit, an investment tax credit. They spent around $70,000 on the rehab. So 30% of that is $20,000. And so in the first year of tax credits, their tax credits equaled $15,000. And then over the 5 years, they could get as much as $61,160 as long as those 3 jobs are maintained. So this is a great project, and really because when they got into the renovation, it was a lot more than they had thought. The tax credits greatly helped them. All right, any questions, general on the tax credits themselves? I just find it's really important for you guys that are applying for this designation to understand the tax credits and understand how potential businesses in your zone would be able to use these tax credits. All right. The first thing that you would want to do if you're thinking about applying for the rural zone program is to think about the boundaries of your rural zone. The regulations say that the proposed zone should be located in an existing historic commercial area, show evidence of economic distress, and that the parcels included should be contiguous. So we want you to look for where there's a concentration of historic commercial buildings, which is typically going to be in your downtown area. I also want you to hone in on those areas or boundaries that have been identified in your strategic or master planning process for your downtown area. You would definitely include blighted buildings and those buildings that are currently vacant and do not have businesses in those. Buildings that just, need that extra, or I should say buildings that need an extra incentive to get a developer to look at them. Generally, I would say do not include vacant or empty lots or greenfield parcels. I would say generally do not include those unless you have right in the center of your downtown a vacant lot where maybe a building is burned or something like that, or building was demolished. You could include those. Just know that if someone came in, purchased that lot, they could get the investment tax credit, but if they built a new structure there, they would not be able to get the rehab tax credit because they would be building new as opposed to rehabbing an existing building. Please note that DCA does reserve the right to trim down your proposed boundary. We do this a pretty good bit, but try to get it in as tight as possible to the historic downtown commercial area. The mapping requirements with the application does ask for a map that identifies the tax parcels to be included within your rural zone. And we also ask you to give us, and this could be on the same map or on separate maps. Sometimes it's easier to look at if it's on separate maps. Give us a map that shows any parcels that have vacancy. So those would be parcels that have buildings on them, but the buildings themselves are vacant, as opposed to an empty lot containing no buildings. We might like to see that on a separate map. And then we'd also like to see a map that shows all the blighted parcels, because you will have to say how many blighted parcels are located in your zone, what percentage of them are blighted. These are the map data requirements. I'm not even going to try to talk about these because this is literally in another language to me. Our GIS staff person, Lisa Weston, can answer any questions that you have about submitting these shape files to DCA. We do need individual parcel boundaries with parcel ID numbers in an attribute table, a boundary file for the entire rural zone, and we also need tax ID numbers for each parcel that you want to include. As I said, I've listed her number and her email address on here so that you can call her. A lot of our rural zone communities are so small that they do not have city staff that do GIS work in-house, but they usually work with their regional commissions to get this information. So that's the mapping requirements. This is just an example of a map that was proposed for a rural zone within an application. As you can see, it appears that they have also tried to include parcels that are located on their bypass. So those are not historic structures. So this is what they ask for. Here is actually the zone that they got from DCA. So as I said, DCA reserves the right to narrow down the boundaries to that historic downtown core, because that's what we're trying to work on and revitalize. So just know that when you're putting together your map, is try to focus in on that downtown core. This is just an example. I believe this is Bainbridge's downtown zone where they included blighted structures, vacant parcels, parking lots, historic structures all on one map. You can do it, but sometimes it's easier just to do it on multiple maps. All right, any questions so far? Y'all are mighty quiet this morning. All right, so moving on to the actual application. Just some general guidance. Try to be clear and concise. We have found in reviewing applications over the past 5 years that some communities seem to think that the more paper that they can give us, the better that looks. And it doesn't. If the paper doesn't actually answer a question, then it's just put to the side. It's not going to be reviewed. So only give us extra information if it directly answers one of the questions that was asked. You're not going to get extra points for submitting, um, general plans for the city or a copy of the entire comp plan or anything like that when we're looking for information, particularly about the proposed zone that you're asking us to designate. Please remember to respond to the prompts completely. I think this is important on any application. Most applications have questions that have multiple pieces within that question. So make sure that you're answering each piece of the question. We'll go over that in a second. It's also really important that after you write the application, have somebody else look at it to make sure that you have answered each piece of the question completely. Go ahead and plan ahead. And I think that's what you're doing right now by attending this workshop now in April. Since the applications are due in August, you will need to plan ahead, because if you don't already have a strategic master plan in place or a feasibility study, you've got to go ahead and get on that right now to try to get that produced before August. Please proofread. Um, please also have somebody else proofread for you. That's what helps me. Oftentimes I've worked on something for so long that I no longer see the mistakes. So I give it to somebody else so they can point out my mistakes. And always, if you have any questions, just go ahead and give me a call. That can make life a whole lot easier for you if you just call me ahead of trying to work through something on your own. If you have a question, shoot me an email or give me a call. All right, so this is the first page of the application. We have added some language. Please complete the full application using the checklist on the last page to ensure that all required items have been included. This is really important. We have a checklist on there, so please check off the items as you put them in the envelope and are about to mail them to us. Make sure you have everything there. Answer the following questions in the application by entering your answer directly below the question rather than attaching additional pages. This is something that we have changed from previous years. We were having trouble actually finding the answers to the questions. They were, shoved back 30 pages away from where the question was, and that got really hard for us. And we weren't, in some cases, finding the answers, so we weren't able to give communities the full points. So what we're asking you to do is, if you need a Word version of the application so that you can type your answer in directly below the question, I'll be glad to email you the Word version if you don't have Adobe on your computer and can use this PDF. But yeah, so please answer the question right below, where the question was asked. Under rules on eligibility, this is where we ask for the population, because your population does need to be less than 15,000. We ask for your poverty rate, and we want you to use the most recent ACS data. And we want your vacancy rate for the parcels that you're including in your application. We ask for total number of historic buildings. We ask whether that you are in compliance with all of those things that I mentioned earlier. And if you're not, you need to start working on that now, because that can take a little while too to get yourself back into compliance. Also, if it's something like your comp planning or your service delivery strategy, that may need to be something that, if your regional commission is helping your community write those, they may have a better idea of the timeline for finishing that up and whether or not it will be approved by October 1st of 2022. They can give you more of an idea on that. And if your community will not have that approved, you may want to think about applying again for next year. Let's see. Also, on population and poverty rate, we do have that on our website. If you go under this second box, which is community and economic development, click on that. Go all the way down to the bottom. You'll see rural zones. Click on that, and this page will come up. Then if you click over here on the right under applications, it will then take you to these documents, and you'll be able to open up a spreadsheet that shows what your community's population is and what your poverty rate is. You don't have to research that. You can just find it right here. Here's a copy of the application. It is a PDF. As I said, if you need a Word, shoot me an email. And also here is the Rural Zone Strategic Plan Elements and Guidance document. So these are the things that we will be looking for in your strategic plan. So you want to make sure that you have in your strategic plan everything we're asking for here. If it's a plan that's a couple of years old and you don't have some of these items in it, you could always amend the plan so that you could make sure that you're going to get full points for those. Um, Also, if it is a plan older than 5 years, you're going to need to do an update on the plan. So it needs to be a plan that was written with at least within the past 5 years. All right, any questions? All right, moving on to page 2, community narrative. Please answer the following questions by entering verbiage directly below the question rather than attaching additional pages. Do not manipulate the questions or the font size. Please note, each question may ask for various pieces of information. Be sure to read the entire question thoroughly in order to be sure you have sufficiently answered all the points. So number 1, provide a brief narrative of the community and the downtown. This should include information about the downtown area, what it was like at its most vibrant, and then current importance of downtown to the overall community. Please limit the answer to 1 page or less. In the past, we'd asked for the history of downtown, and we were getting 8 pages of very detailed history from the dawn of time to the present day, and that's just not the information that we need. So we have reworked this question to just ask for the importance of the downtown to the overall community, what it looks like, and then limit that answer to 1 page or less. Number 2, outline what specific factors have led to the decline of downtown and the proposed rural zone. Include a thorough discussion of how this area has slipped into a state of economic distress. Sometimes people will just say it's because of Amazon. Um, so let's try to be a little bit more specific as to the specific reasons why your downtown has declined. Try to go into a little bit of detail on that if you can pinpoint it. If you can't, talk about the various factors that led to the decline of downtown. It may be the closure of a mill or another business that employed most of the town, and that led to decline in the population, which then ultimately led to decline in your downtown. Maybe there was a bypass constructed that led to the decline of your downtown, a nearby mall, that kind of thing. Then we want you to describe in number 3 the blighting conditions found within your proposed zone. You should also talk about whether or not you have a high poverty rate in your community, a high vacancy rate in the downtown, and then talk about the blighted structures. A lot of times it's here that people talk about having a large number of pieces of real estate in their downtown owned by absentee landlords. And because those folks don't live in the community anymore, they've allowed buildings to deteriorate over time. Maybe there was a tornado that came through and people just haven't been able to find the money to rehab their buildings. You can explain that thoroughly here, and we would love for you to reference photographs that illustrate the blight. You know, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Oftentimes you can take a photograph a couple of shots of your downtown, a block of your downtown with 5 or 6 blighted buildings in a row. That really helps to tell your story. Number 4, explain specifically how the community foresees the rural zone designation assisting your community. And this is one of those questions that has multiple parts. So let's pick this question apart. Question 4, it's asking you to describe the results that your community anticipates happening if your community is designated as a rural zone. How are these results going to be achieved? What specific steps the community is going to take to achieve these goals? And really, you're going to outline those steps when you talk specifically how your rural zone team is going to promote the tax credits to existing businesses and new businesses in the downtown area, how you're going to promote the program to get those businesses to take advantage of the tax credits, purchase property in your area, rehab property in your zone, and create new businesses and jobs. And then ultimately, how this designation is going to reduce economic distress within your downtown. So that's a lot of things to answer in one question, but just be sure that you hit on each of those pieces. What I want you to understand with this question is that what we've realized over the past 5 years is that rural zone team is extremely important. The rural zone team leader is very important. That if they're not out there promoting the tax credits and helping businesses understand how to use those tax credits, you may as well give it up. Um, just putting out a brochure and maybe putting something on your website is from what we have found doesn't work. It's those downtown managers that are out there walking the streets, talking to businesses about expanding. When new businesses come in, or potential new businesses come in and to look at property in downtown, they're talking up the rules on tax credits. The team has educated the real estate brokers on the tax credits so that those brokers, when they are showing property to potential businesses, they can talk about the tax credits. So getting that word out is extremely important. So when answering that, really, that's why it says outline specifically how the rural zone team will promote the tax credits. Outline each of the things that rural zone team is going to do to promote the tax credits over the 5-year life of the program. I just talked a lot about that. Anybody have any questions? Local leadership and initiatives. Choose your team leader wisely. I just said how important the team and the team leader are. The team leader is going to be that person that's going to be my primary contact um, on the program and on getting the tax credits for the businesses and working through that. So that team leader, it'd be great if that could be a full-time staff person working for the city, but I know in a lot of rural communities that may not be the case, but that that full-time person is what has been in communities that have been most successful with this program. So just reading what the application says, the success of the rules on designation is directly related to the strength of the team. DCA requires that each team designate a team leader who's responsible for promoting the program locally, and in addition, at least 5 other individuals who are committed to supporting the implementation of the strategic plan and also helping to promote the program. It's recommended that the team leader be a local government staffer, and the rest of the team includes stakeholders from both the public and private sectors like Chamber of Commerce, DDA, local media, real estate brokers, bankers, etc. And the team leader should have an economic development background and/or expertise in downtown development, if at all possible. Here we ask you to give your team leader's name, number, email address, and you can either summarize the team leader's economic development background or downtown development background, or you can just attach the team leader's resume. Then on page 3, we ask you to give us the names of your other Rural Zone team members. Give us their name, what their job title is, and how they will help contribute to promoting the rural zone tax credits. So, for instance, we have that John Doe is also going to be on this team. He is the editor of the local newspaper, and so he's going to assist with promotion of the rural zone tax credit program by publishing informational articles that describe the benefits of the program. He may do interviews with other rural zone communities that have had it longer than your community to talk about the positive changes that have happened in their community. And then he may even write articles that highlight local businesses that have, in fact, utilized the tax credits and how they've really helped. So that might be what somebody on the team might do to help. Other potential team members might be, as we said before, real estate agents are good if they're the folks that are showing property in downtown. Your Main Street manager, local government staff, like maybe somebody from the planning department, um, maybe someone that works in permitting, because if somebody's coming in to get a permit to do work on a building, then they might be eligible for the rehab tax credit. So you would want that person to be aware of the tax credits too. Informed elected officials, local newspaper staff, Chamber of Commerce staff, local bankers, DDA staff, maybe the chairman of the Historic Preservation Commission. Those are kind of people just to get your brain thinking about who might be on this team that could get out and talk about the rural zone benefits. On page 4, part 3, rural zone planning. So in the table below, we ask you to list the local, you'll notice that local is in bold print, the local tools and financial resources currently in place to support downtown revitalization within your community. Please only include those programs that were established, funded, and are administered locally. Do not include state or federal financing programs that a community might be eligible to apply for, such as DDRLF or the Historic Preservation Tax Credits. We know that you're eligible to apply for those programs, but what we're asking for are incentive programs, are local tools that are used locally and administered locally. So an example of that, we give it there. The name of the resource of the program is the Downtown Facade Grant Program. It is managed by the city's Main Street program. A description of the program. The program is funded by the local Main Street and provides incentives to businesses and property owners to make improvements to the exterior of the historic property and to renovate and or rehab exterior of the buildings. Will provide up to 50% of project costs up to $1,500. And sometimes communities will put in there, have given 3 downtown facade grants totaling X amount in the past 2 years to let us know that this is actually a program that folks are using. This question gets to local um, local skin in the game, for lack of a better word. It's showing that the local folks are willing to invest money in their downtown and they have tools for the revitalization of their downtown. They're not just asking the state to give them the rural zone designation without also being willing to invest money in their downtown themselves. So please list any local tools or financial resources currently in place. We also have people put things like we have a local SBDC, um, or that could be one, but we're looking more for a local tool that is administered by the city. And I've already said that. So don't include state programs that are accessible to all communities, like a CDBG or DDRLF. Moving on to page 5, strategic plan, master plan. So rather than requiring the reviewers to read through the entire master plan, which is often difficult depending on the number of applications that we get in, we ask you to provide the page numbers where we can find these elements that we're looking for. So we look to see that there is a SWOT analysis done. Um, strengths, weakness, opportunities, threats within your strategic master plan. We want to see that the current state of downtown infrastructure is looked at, and we are looking specifically for water sewer capacity, parking, internet broadband access, street pedestrian connectivity. And then if there are any gaps in this infrastructure, please tell us how those will be addressed. Um, so if this is found within your master plan, please put the name of your master plan and the page numbers that we can find these things on. Sometimes something like infrastructure may not be discussed in detail within the strategic downtown master plan, but may be discussed in great detail in the community's comprehensive plan. So if that's the case, you can always put the name of the comp plan, and then please, if you will, copy those pages of your comp plan, because that may only be about 10 pages or less, and then give us those pages rather than giving us your entire comp plan to look at. So you can copy those pages and then reference those pages. Just want to let you know that this chart is only to give our review team the page numbers so that we can refer to those page numbers within your application packet. So be very specific in the name of the document that we need to refer to and the page numbers. Also, we are looking for within your strategic plan that you've outlined a vision for the future of your downtown. Specifically, when you are looking at what you want your downtown to look like at the end of the 5-year rural zone designation, if possible. If this is an already written strategic downtown master plan, it may have been a 10-year plan. So we understand that you're not going to rewrite it just to have a look at the future of your downtown for 5 years. That's fine. But if you are writing it specifically for this rural zone application, we'd like you to say what you envision your downtown will look like at the end of 5 years. We want you to outline any potential barriers to the realization of that vision. And then this is really important. Identify necessary projects and clearly outline action steps to realize the vision. So there will be within your application a list of goals that you want to achieve over a particular time period. But what we'd like to see in your plan is not just a list of those goals, but very clearly action steps to getting to completing those goals. So for instance, we'd love to see this kind of an action plan within your strategic plan that identifies the goals, say how you would define success, who your partners are, and then each task that would need to be undertaken to achieve that goal. Who's the responsible person that's going to take care of that task? When's a due date for finishing the task? What's the budget? Maybe where's that budget money coming from to achieve each of those goals? Here's another example of what a work plan might look like, where you have the goal on the left and then you have various tasks, who's going to accomplish those tasks, who we might partner with to achieve those tasks, what the time frame is, what the cost, and then where funding would come from. Another example from this is from Jessup's RSVP plan, where the action item is a water tower sign. It outlines who the lead person is, who any partners are, what the timeline is, the funding, what obstacles there are, and then the 10 or 9 steps to completing or getting that water tower sign completed. So we definitely want to see this in your application, and you will get more points for those. We'd also like to see if you've already accomplished some of these goals or action items. You can let us know that as well. These are some examples of strategic plans that we have gotten. We have gotten some beautiful ones done. This is an LCI downtown plan update prepared by a private consultant for City of Jonesboro. We've gotten RSVP plans from cities that the Carl Vinson Institute of Government has done. This is another one, RSVP plan by Carl Vinson for the city of Villa Rica. We've had downtown master plans done by the regional commissions. This is the one for City of Commerce. And then we've also had strategic plans that were literally written by staff people. The staff person planner for the city of Springfield wrote their strategic plan and just used our guideline for what we want to see in the strategic plan. She just used that to create her table of contents and then wrote it herself. So you can pay $50,000 for a plan or pay a staff person for the plan or work with a regional commission on the plan. But just make sure that you do review our strategic plan guidance document, which is on our website, to make sure that you've included everything that we'll be scoring on in your plan. Any questions on your strategic downtown master plan that's required? Okay, moving on to the feasibility study that's also required. On page 6, we ask questions about the feasibility study. We ask that utilizing info gleaned from the feasibility study or market analysis, please describe the types and kinds of businesses that are practical for your community to pursue, as well as an analysis of why those are good fits for your community. Identify existing barriers that may impede the addition of new businesses downtown. And then outline the community's strategy for attracting these types of businesses, jobs, and associated investments. And identify local entities that work together to implement the strategy, like maybe the chamber and real estate brokers and Main Street and the DDA. Discuss public actions, investments that will be taken to encourage private investment. And most people that submit the feasibility study market analysis, they actually submit leakage reports. I know that the regional commissions do leakage reports for their communities. Georgia Power, John Van Brunt, ECG does them as well. Is
Yes,
that
we do,
correct?
and we're excited to help in any way we can.
Yes. So you can get these at, I believe Georgia Power does them for free. I'm assuming ECG does. I don't know about the regional commissions, but they could run this leakage report for you that basically shows where you have a surplus of businesses in your community, and then where you have a leakage of folks buying particular types of products outside of your community. And where you see, if you see a case where there's that leakage, then there may be room for a new business to open that sells that item. So for instance, in this one, for City of Greensboro or Jonesboro, you see that they have 100% leakage out of the community as far as shoes go. So you may consider, if you're the Main Street manager, you may consider taking this information to an existing clothing store and tell them they may consider also carrying shoes in their clothing store, because the demand is around $200,000 in your community for shoes, but there is no supply. Um, I'm not sure that this would be sufficient demand to maybe create a shoe store all by itself, but you could definitely recommend that your existing clothing store perhaps expand and also carry shoes. But you can look at this to decide if there's the market within your community to support various types of businesses. As we said on this one, the leakage report alone is not enough. So you can't just submit the 2-page leakage report and be done with it. We need you to also spend, a page or two actually analyzing the data that's within the leakage report, as to which businesses that you might be able to pursue based on data gleaned from this report, how you would go about courting those new businesses, and a plan for trying to get those businesses and investments to come to your downtown. I think I've just said that. Yeah. So we want to see your community strategy for attracting these types of jobs and investments. All right, so that's the feasibility study. Just making sure you understand that don't just submit a two-page leakage report. That's not enough. You've got to have the analysis of that report done as well. All right, page 6 and 7. This is where we want you to talk about project readiness. Are there any revitalization projects ready to proceed within your proposed zone? Has somebody been talking about purchasing a building and rehabbing it to open it as a um, beauty spa? But they just don't quite have enough money. But if they were able to take advantage of the rural zone tax credits, that might be the tipping point and they might be able to move forward with the project. So revitalization projects might include acquisition of property, rehab property, establishment of a new business, or an expansion of an existing business. But what I want you to clearly hear me say is only include those types of projects that may be eligible for the rural zone tax credits. So only give me those types of projects that will be undertaken by a private business or developers, not the city, because the city would not be eligible for the tax credits. So just give me those types of projects that are shovel ready and ready to move forward. So on the chart, you're going to give me the project name, the address, and the project lead, the description of the project with a projected completion date, a number of jobs to be created, possibly, and a description of the attached documentation. And that's one of the things that most communities do not give me on the application, and therefore they do not get points for this section. So if you just tell me the names of projects and a description and a guesstimate of the number of jobs that are going to be created, but you don't attach documentation to prove that this project is shovel ready, then you will not get full points on this section. So in order to receive maximum points, you must include attachments that prove readiness to proceed. And this documentation could be in the form of architectural plans, building permits, business plans, detailed cost estimates from qualified contractors, an engineering study. Sometimes communities have given us zoning variances because the business needs the zoning changed in order to locate within a particular building. Those are the kinds of documentation that we need, and with those you'll get full points on this section. A lot of communities over the years have given us letters of intent from a business owner, and a letter of intent will not get you any points. So there's really no sense in submitting a letter of intent without something to document that the person is moving forward with the project. It could be even like a bank commitment letter that shows that the person is moving forward and is gathering finances together to purchase the property and renovate the property. That might work. If you have any questions, though, on whether or not the documentation that you've gathered is sufficient, you can always give me a call and we can discuss it, or you can shoot me an email, or you can scan it and send it to me and ask me if this would be enough to get points for this section. So we would want to give points for communities that have shovel-ready projects ready to go when the designation starts January 1 of 2023. If no specific revitalization activities are known at the time of application, just say NA that you don't have it. As I said before, do not include projects that are going to be completed by the DDA or the city or any other agency not eligible for the rural zone tax credits. And also, we have had communities that have discussed at length projects that are already completed or will already be completed before January 1 of 2023. Please don't include those. We are looking for projects that will be able to take the tax credits in 2023 and beyond. Any questions on project readiness? All right, so the last page includes an application checklist, and I would love for you to make sure when you're getting ready to mail everything that you go down this checklist, literally handwrite check marks in each of these once you have included everything. So we need a cover letter addressed to our commissioner, Commissioner Nunn, and then Commissioner Wilson, who's the Commissioner of Economic Development. That needs to be signed by the mayor. A feasibility study or market analysis or leakage report. And we clearly put in red that the leakage report alone will not be sufficient, that a thoughtful analysis should be submitted with the leakage report, and then what that analysis should include. Just a couple of pages would be all we need. The master plan or strategic plan should be attached. A hard copy map showing the rural zone boundaries and tax parcels located within the zone, and the map should include street names and a title showing the jurisdiction's name. Street names would really help us to orient ourselves, so please include those. And then a map identifying tax parcels that are included that show vacant structures, vacant parcels, and blighted parcels. And we've already gone over that. And then the digital GIS files, which, as I said, call Lisa Weston if you have any questions about submitting those. A representative sampling of photos keyed to a map. So it'd be great to use the map that you've created of the rural zone boundaries and then show us where each photograph is taken. And then a property tax parcel table that includes parcel number as tax parcel ID number, owner, address, current tax value, acreage, use and condition of each tax parcel included in the zone. And then you're going to mail me the original application and 3 copies. That equals 4 copies total. An original and 3 copies. I'm going to say it one more time. The original and 3 copies, that totals 4. We always get 3. We need 4. Um, and if you have any questions, there's my email address and telephone number. Applications can be hand delivered to DCA or postmarked no later than 5 o'clock on August 19th of 2022. Late applications will not be considered. They'll be returned to you. So get it to me before then. And as I've already said, if you want me to review your application prior to your officially submitting it, you need to get it to me in like June or July. So I have time to review it, make my notes, talk to you, and you have time to make those changes or corrections before submitting it to us. Just so, because I have gotten questions on this in the past, just so you know, when I say photographs keyed to a map, here are photographs. There are 4 photographs here. And then here's the map. You can see number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4. They're keyed to the map 1, 2, 3, and 4. Here it shows where the photographs were taken of which buildings. So this is what I'm talking about when I say a photograph keyed to a map. This is another example. Downtown Perry showed which buildings she was taking a picture of. And then when I mentioned the last thing on the checklist, the property tax parcel table, this is what I mean. You can just set up an Excel spreadsheet that shows the parcel number, the owner, street name, value, acreage, what its use is. And they also added condition, occupied, and historic or not. So all the information was on one table that we needed. This is just where I wanted to reiterate that the application should not be submitted unless all boxes are checked. So please make sure that you include everything that you're supposed to. As I said, the applications are due by 5 p.m. on August 19th of 2022, and the designations are typically announced by mid-October of each year, so mid-October of 2022. Do y'all have any questions for me?